boys and girls. Welcome back to What Do You Think? Today's story is a Bible story, and it's called Daniel in the Lion's Den. Once upon a time, 3 men stood in front of Darius, king of Babylonia. They were the king's top aides. Each of them was the governor of a large part of the country. From the look on the king's face, he was not happy. "I am disappointed in the work you have been doing," he said. Then he looked directly at the oldest of the 3 men. "Except for you, Daniel. You take care of all the problems that arise in your sector. You keep good records. You are wise and honest." Daniel bowed his head. "I serve the king as best I can," he said. The king stood up and said, "And I thank you for it. Now I want to ask you to do even more. I want you to be my top aide. You rule over all the governors and the officials in my kingdom. Anyone who wants to talk to me must talk to you first. I know I can count on you to make sure that all the people of Babylonia obey the laws as you always do." Again, Daniel bowed his head. "The king does me great honor," he said. As the men left the throne room, the 2 other governors walked away together, looking back at Daniel with hate in their eyes. It was a look that Daniel had seen often during his life in Babylonia. When he was just a boy, he had been taken from his home in a distant city called Jerusalem. The old king of Babylonia, Nebuchadnezzar, had destroyed much of Jerusalem, including the Holy Temple, where the people worship God Almighty. Daniel was one of the many Jews who had been taken captive and forced to work for King Nebuchadnezzar. But God had been with Daniel. He had given Daniel the power to tell the meaning of dreams. Long ago, this gift had earned the praise of King Nebuchadnezzar. Ever since then, Daniel had been an important person in the king's palace. At this point, I just want to stop and ask you if you can remember another story about Daniel. If you can't remember, go back and you can listen to it again. But Daniel has always been favored by the kings because he was just a good man. Every day Daniel passed places where the people who lived in the city in Babylon worshipped. Glorious buildings with golden images of all their gods. He saw them doing things that made him look away in shame. He saw them eat food that was unclean to him. This is not the way of his people, but the kings of the country had always allowed him to worship God in the way he was taught. He was grateful for that and satisfied with his life. When Daniel arrived at his home, he placed his prayer shawl across his shoulders and then stood by the window to pray to God as he did every day. 2 men were outside watching him. These were the 2 governors who were now under Daniel. "Daniel is getting too much power," one said. "He doesn't even belong here. He's a foreigner. Why should he rule over you and me?" The other man agreed. "If only we could think of a way to make the king turn against him." "I know," the first man cried. "I know what we can do. Hurry, let's go see the king again. I'll tell you my plan on the way." 2 days later, the king sent out a proclamation. For the next 30 days, it is against the law for the people of Babylon to worship any god or man other than the king. Anyone who disobeys will be thrown into a pit of lions. Daniel's two enemies smiled when they heard about the proclamation. This had been their plan. They knew that the king was a very proud man who liked people to honor him. It was easy to talk him into signing the new law. That evening, the two men barged into Daniel's house when he was praying and grabbed him by the arms. "You're breaking the king's new law," the first man cried. Daniel had not heard about the law, but it didn't make any difference. "No law is higher than God's law," he said. "We'll see about that," said the second man, and they dragged Daniel off to the palace. "This man broke your law," they told King Darius. "He must be punished. Throw him into the lion's den." When King Darius heard what had happened, his face grew red with anger. He knew he had been tricked by the jealous men, but he had signed the new law and could not take it back. In Babylonia, no written law could be changed. Sadly, he called his guards, and they led Daniel to a deep pit in the ground. 3 hungry lions paced back and forth on the floor pit. "I am truly sorry, Daniel," the king said. "There is nothing I can do to stop this. May your God protect you from the lions." The guards then grabbed Daniel and pushed him down into the hole. Then they picked up a big stone and placed it over the pit. All night long, Darius tossed and turned in bed. He prayed to the God of Daniel that Daniel would be spared. Early the next morning, he rushed to the pit. "Daniel, are you still alive?" A voice came from below. "I am, great king!" Relieved, Darius ordered his men to move the stone that covered the pit. Down below, he saw Daniel standing quietly with the lions at his feet. They had not killed Daniel nor harmed him in any way. The king breathed a sigh of relief. "How is it that you are still alive?" he asked. Daniel replied, "My God knew I was innocent. He sent an angel to keep the lions from harming me." The king ordered his men to lift Daniel out of the pit. "I command everyone in this kingdom to worship and honor the God of Daniel. His God is the living God, the one who lives forever. And he rescues people and sets them free by working great miracles." What do you think? Now, Daniel, he had to live among people who had different beliefs than him. Remember, Daniel was a good, godly man and believed in God and prayed to God. And people were jealous of Daniel a lot of times. And they all prayed to another god or other gods. They had many gods sometimes, and they would make big statues or something in remembrance of these gods that were fake. And they would go and they would pray. But Daniel didn't believe in that. He prayed only to God, the true almighty creator of this world. So he never wanted to be disloyal. And even though he really wasn't supposed to be praying to God, well, he did it anyway. And he said it wouldn't have mattered. He was going to still pray to his own God, even if he had heard about that new law. Now, do you think that the other two went to the king, to King Darius, and talked him into making this law so that they would be like, oh, the favorites of the king. We want you to set out a law saying that people can only pray to you. And they thought that that would make the king feel really special and good. So they did talk the king into making that law. And then they were the very ones who caught Daniel praying to his God. So after the king did make that law about no one praying to any other God except for him, and that they would be thrown into the lion's den if they did it, well, once Daniel was caught, the king couldn't go back on that. So he had to allow them to throw Daniel into the lion's den. But really, King Darius really liked Daniel, and he really didn't want him to be killed by the lions. And then, after Daniel got in there with these lions, and he prayed and prayed and prayed to his God, Daniel's God, our God, he sent an angel to protect Daniel and shut the mouths of the lions. And the lions turned out to be very gentle and kind to Daniel. And after that, then King Darius, he realized that Daniel's God is the true holy God that performs miracles. And it turned him to God as well, the true God. So what do you think? Have you ever been in a situation where maybe you knew it was the wrong thing to do, and your friends may try to talk you into doing the wrong thing, but you couldn't bring yourself to doing it? You just had to do the right thing. You had to do what is really right in God's eyes. Has anybody ever had that experience? Well, I hope that you enjoyed this story. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, What Do You Think 154, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye, girls and boys.